It is estimated that there are about 10 to the power of 85 elementary particles in the universe. Now that's more than 100 people here. If I go down the row and I ask you for a digit between 0 and 9. 3. 9. 5. 7. Okay. I'm going to do this for as many people as there are here. Let's say there are 200 people here. The resulting number on the board will be a number, the improbability of which is completely measurable. If you have 200 digits, it will be 1 over 10 to the power of 200. Compare that to the number of particles in the universe. The point is that the improbability of anything in particular is completely irrelevant unless you start out being able to predict or trying to predict. But we're here. Obviously we're here, and the existence of each of you is incredibly improbable. Your father probably ejaculated 1,000 times, each time giving rise to 200 million spermatozoa, right? That's 200 billion chances to 1 in the first place that the spermatozoa should encounter one of thousands of ova in your mother, and that's just one generation. You can calculate that in just a few generations, you get something which is, in fact, just so super astronomically larger than this, that it's totally impossible that any of you exists. That's what this argument proves. But you're here. So obviously the argument is fallacious.
Dr. Craig is going to be asking questions to Dr. De Sousa. And Dr. De Sousa will have 1 minute to answer each question for 5 minutes to the maximum, and then we're going to be switching roles.
Okay. Let's first talk about my cosmological argument for the existence of God. With respect to the premise that the universe began to exist, I argued that the existence of an actually infinite number of things would involve self-contradictions. And you said, but there is demonstrably an actual infinity of points contained in any finite distance. Now, that presupposes that space-time is continuous, does it not?
At least dense.
Yes. All right. So that's presupposing that. Isn't that, however, a disputed question?
Fair enough.
Okay. Let's talk about the difference you raised between being boundless and being infinite. Certainly, it's true that we can think of finite spatial surfaces, like the surface of a sphere, that has no boundary, but that it's finite. With respect to the past, however, barring a circular time, which I don't know if you want to endorse, the fact that the past is finite would imply that it's bounded, would it not? If the past were finite, it would be bounded.
How are we supposed to do this? Am I supposed to answer each specific question, or am I supposed to let him go for 5 minutes and then...
No, your time is included, so just...
Okay, so, the point here is that, there are many possible alternatives. One is that the Big Bang is one of an infinity or a very large number of Big Bangs in a multiverse. As you know, that's one of the hypotheses that a lot of people take seriously.
But that's
crazy though it may seem.
That's different from your point about boundlessness and infinity, isn't it?
It is different. I was only trying to point out that the argument, as you stated, is fallacious because it rests on these dubious premises. I'm not saying that any of the contradictories of the things you said are completely established, but all of them are entirely dubious.
Well, but my difficulty is it seems to me here with respect to infinity and boundlessness that while these aren't synonymous, in the case of the past, if the past is demonstrated to be finite, then it would follow that the universe came into being.
It will follow that the universe came into being in a singularity, which is a situation in which none of the physical laws and rules apply, and therefore we can infer absolutely nothing. But remember that my point here was not so much that you couldn't have a beginning of the universe, but that saying that God was then an explanation of this mystery.
Yes, that was a different
vacuous.
point. Yes, you said that's a vacuous explanation. Now, isn't it the case, however, that the arguments that I presented were deductive arguments, not inductive arguments? So that if the premises are true, the conclusion follows with logical necessity.
But I completely reject the premise that only a personal being could possibly have given rise.
Well, now that's a new point. That's a new point. Now, let's talk about that. You said perhaps the laws outside of space-time could be the cause of the universe. Now, laws of nature are abstract objects. These are propositions of a certain form, perhaps mathematical equations. Abstract objects as such don't stand in causal relations, do they?
They stand in explanatory relations.
But
you talk about God as the entrance to the best explanation. So what we have to understand here is that there is, as an explanation, an event in which God acts.
All right, good. But I'm talking about your alternative where you appeal to laws. The laws themselves are abstract objects and therefore can't cause anything. Laws are simply general descriptions of what happens in the world of a certain form.
That's absolutely correct. Yes.
All right. Let's go and talk about the fine-tuning argument then. You said any combination of numbers that the students might pick would result in an enormously improbable number. Correct? Now, suppose that the students were to each put a number on a piece of paper and lay it on their desk, and then we were to discover that they had enumerated in exact order, beginning with the first student through the 200, the natural numbers from 1 to 200 in order. Wouldn't you suspect something was fishy?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. But the point is that ahead of time, we don't have any specifications. We are looking at the specification completely retroactively. And it's also retroactively that each of us can measure the probability of our own existence. And consequently, our own individual existence.
Right.
Is...
See, my time is up.
All right, thank you. There is, whoa. That was fine. I, for one, enjoy the back and forth format. I feel it's quite intense. If the participants are following that and the audience is fine, I think that's okay. I believe the intention was that the speaker would ask a single question and then we would give the respondent a minute to respond. But I think this worked fine.
Yeah, let's continue like that. So let me ask, so because I'm not this way, that's fine. No, my first question is on something that we haven't really debated yet, and that is the issue of objective value.
Yes.
I think that many people, when they think about objective value, make the mistake of thinking that an objective value is the only way in which you can have, as it were, a real value. And the contrast is with something that is merely subjective and that does not have any reality. But I think that morality...
Now, are you going to ask me a question?
Yeah. Morality, I get 5 minutes. Morality can be relative and yet not subjective. And morality is relative to human nature, to what we need, to what gives us pain and pleasure, and that is perfectly sufficient. You don't need absolute morality, and indeed, those people who believe in absolute morality are the ones that go around chopping other people's heads off.